some mini experiments to determine which hypothesis was correct or closer to the truth. The first two hypotheses were shown not to have so much of an impact on vocabulary growth. They did a living room study where they studied the cultures of different families, and they were all the same. So then they did field trips where they'd split up the class in half, and some students got to go on a field trip on regular field trips, and the other half wouldn't. And yet there was no difference in their vocabulary growth either. But then the third hypothesis seemed to show more of a promise as to why there was a big discrepancy between vocabularies. This is where the teacher would conduct discussions before and after and during the field trips, where they would engage the students. Okay, we're going to go visit a post office. Now, what happens in a post office? So the students got to express and use different words that they wouldn't, instead of just showing them oh, there's a post office. So they took these findings and they decided to conduct a bigger and better study and try to figure out what happened or what's going on.
And then in this study, it was a longitudinal study. So the children were observed from the time they were 10 months of age until they were 3 years of age. So that was about 2 years and a half. They recorded and analyzed verbal interactions in 42 families. So basically, the families, anything that was directed towards the children, so it was positive or negative, don't touch that, please don't leave that alone, good job. And the researchers took a total of 6 years to analyze all the data collected and recorded, and it took an average about 6 to 8 hours to analyze just 1 hour of observed data. And then they followed on the children once they were 9 years of age to see how well they performed in school. So in families, there were 42 families, which were grouped into 3 socioeconomic categories. There were that participated in the study. There were 13 were of high socioeconomic status, 23 were middle socioeconomic status, which consisted of working class families, and 6 were of low socioeconomic status, which consisted of families on welfare. All families were considered well functioning, and then families were recruited based on stability, such as having signs of permanence, such as owning a house and having a telephone. And then the children were 42 children were were observed in the study, 1 per family, and they were all gender and race balanced. And for the methods, they observed and recorded everything. So basically, it was 1 month, 1 hour per month. And if they, for example, if the study, if the parent had to go to leave or something, it would make up that hour, that rest, the time that was remaining, another time during the week. They recorded each other in that hour, and only the behaviors of each person that were likely to be followed by a change in the other person's behavior. For example, if the mom had a cough and was trying to clean the kid's face, and the kid would push that away, that was considered direct behavior. The vocabulary growth curves was used instead of an IQ test, since it provided direct and continuous measurement of a child's intellectual functioning, does not require the hypothetical constructs and statistical assumptions of an IQ test. It was culturally unbiased, and it measured learning while it was occurring. And then the inter-observer agreement was really high. It was about 93% throughout the whole time. And then they tried to keep the same observer within the same family. And then the observer effect was not a concern for the fact that it's really hard for humans to maintain unnatural behaviors for a long period of time. And kids have really short attention span. And if the parent was to change their behavior in front of the observer, like trying to be more, have a better good behavior, the kid would act unnatural, because the kid would notice that the parent was acting weird or was trying to be which is not acting as what they were used to.
Okay. And so we go to the results. So some of the false results we found is that there were sizable differences in the amount of communication between parents and children in different families. And so as you can see, the average number of words for a child in different families was about a typical hour while they were awake and interacting with a parent. It was about 2,150 for children in professional or ISCS families, 1,250 for children in working class families, and only 620 for children in low SES families. According to these differences, if you extrapolate it, by the age of 3, some children will have heard over 3 million words from their parents, while others only have heard about 10 million words. Those also, while both not talkative and non-talkative parents, they found use the same number of basically prohibitions and words to control those kids and tell them not to do stuff. they found that talkative parents tended to engage in this sort of extra talk, which was not necessarily talk needed to in the daily functioning of the child. And this extra talk tended to have much richer vocabulary and have a higher rate of complicated ideas and positive affirmations than of the normal communication that was used in the everyday maintenance of the household. And they found that high SES parents tended to be much more talkative and engage much more of this extra talk than low SES parents. And so they think that the amount of communication, they found that the amount of communication, especially extra talk, that parents probably received from their parents, was strongly correlated to the later vocabulary size and basically the complexity of the verbal interactions and the verbal ability. This relationship was so strong that it accounted for the entire correlation between SES and or race and the study children's intellectual abilities in the verbal domain. From this, they conclude that the amount of talk, especially extra talk, that children receive from their parents is predictive, strongly correlated with their future academic success, and that children of high SES parents tend to hear more extra talk. And basically, since this difference is so large, and it's occurring in such a critical period of child's development between the ages of 1 and 3, they basically kind of conclude that a simple school-based intervention, which is taking place several years later when they start to go to preschool, isn't enough to actually wipe out the differences that's caused by the differences between the amount of talk children receive from their parents. So they kind of actually advocate the idea of basically parent education and mentoring for parents in a low SES status, and also government subsidies to help basically create really quality childcare in low SES areas, so that parents who a lot of times are working or really busy, they have a place where they can send their kids, which they'll get the extra, all this word, this communication and attention that they need to help them develop at the rate of children in high SES families. And that's it. Any questions?
Did I understand you correctly that it's possible to overcome all the advantages that the high socioeconomic status parents have over the lower socioeconomic from years 1 to 3? It's possible to fully overcome it in a fairly short time?
So from this study, what they found is that once they hit the age of 3, interventions at that point don't seem to really be able to help the children close that gap, because basically the experiences up to that point with their parents is already so great.
I misunderstood.
If you they'll say that you should intervene before that and help give parent mentoring, teaching parents how to better communicate with the children, and then also try to have government subsidize quality preschools for in low SES areas where these children can go, and that way they can get this communication from the teachers at those daycares and the faculty at those daycares, so that they kind of even out that playing field.
So you're saying, just to summarize, to make sure I understand, years 1 to 3 are critical, but there's still hope after that to make up for some of that, right? Or after 3, is it hopeless?
So it's
Not
hopeless.
hopeless.
You can still have advantages, but they're not long lasting
Yeah.
as if you had done
Right,
intervention
okay.
before.
Yeah, because what they saw originally with the original interventions was the kids did show with the Head Start. The kids initially showed an advantage over other kids who wanted Head Start and at the same SES, but over time that kind of got washed out. And
So the study then, if I may summarize one aspect of it, it's very encouraging for early intervention, but a lot less so for later intervention.
yeah, it's really they really kind of stress those into the in the talking about the findings, that it's really important that, because basically the parents communicate with the children so much that it's not possible in a couple hour school day to make up for all that difference. Because just if you're talking about over 1,000 word difference in just a single hour of communicating with a parent over a 3-year period, it's just astronomical. I mean, you're talking about millions of words. And also, since, as you said, it's that 1 to 3 is such a critical period in the development of the brain and stuff, that they think that it's really necessary that if you want to even out this gap, you really want to intervene, do a parent intervention to help basically before they hit 3 years old, before they're going. So, yeah.
At the same time, I would think that just from the standpoint of after 3, it's hopeless.
No, I mean, because the brain is still developing, and like I said, the head starts did show some effects. They weren't as encouraging as they others.
What was the reason that it was not like long lasting? Like you said that they showed improvement for a while if it's after 3, but after that, after a while.
So it's kind of what we're talking about with this whole idea of that 1 to 3 is a critical period, and that if the children aren't getting the communication from the parents between 1 and 3, they're probably not getting it later on either. And so basically, in those time points when they're home, it's a foundation is being laid, and that later on the learning ability is kind of to an extent affected by that foundation. And so if your foundation is basically only so big, what you can build on it is only going to be so big also. So that's part of it. Another part of it was also had to do with it's kind of like a whole self-esteem and how confident these children were in school. Because at one point in the book they kind of give an example of a low SES parent communicating with all the kids, and basically almost all the communication is all like basically, don't do this, you need to act good, don't do that. It's basically all discouraging. The parent's not really showing very much interest in the kid. And the argument they're making is when the kids spent the first years of their life kind of learning that their primary caregiver they're dependent on doesn't really find them that interesting, it doesn't really, and that they're not really, basically finding that special, then it's gonna basically kind of help their confidence when they're going on into school that they can succeed, which will make them less likely to succeed.
Yeah.
Wait, they didn't really say that their parents didn't find them interesting?
They didn't say that. They said that it's basically based on the interactions. It can come across to the kid that they're not super interesting. Because in this specific case they were giving, the parent wasn't basically the parent seemed to be ignoring the kid most of the time. And then when she did talk to the kid, it's usually tell them not to do something or to behave correctly. There was very little just spontaneous interaction of just asking the kid a question or anything like that. But that was just one example.
Did the study, and I may have missed this, but geographically, did it recruit from a wide area or just one specific area?
It recruited from the Turner House and then from some other the professors.
Yeah, they like recruited people that they knew, like professors and their kids, also from the house preschool and from like local areas. I mean, they tried to even it out, like try to take race and ethnicity and gender out of the equation.
Where did the professor, where was that?
Oh, University of Kansas.
So it might be different in urban situations and urban cities?
Yeah, but at university settings,
That's true.
Can you go back to Beckett really quick? Because I'm curious about how participants are selected. So they didn't take any control of the parents, right?
No.
They're not controlling, like the parents have to be at the same IQ level or something
No.
like that?
No,
So
it's
when
the
it-
socioeconomic status is what they're looking for.
But wouldn't it be that IQ can be genetically inherited, and without controlling your parents, the result is basically cannot be generalized?
I don't think they looked into. Did they look into that? I don't think they looked into
No,
that.
they didn't.
They did mention that that basically the talkativeness they thought might have a genetic, like how talkative a parent is, might be partly genetically linked. I don't know if they actually looked in. I don't know if they actually looked into IQ. But I mean, it could be a factor, but with the correlation this strongly, it probably wouldn't just be driven by IQ alone.
Yeah, well the thing is that if you have low SES level, we cannot just assume that they have lower IQ status, but we can probably assume that those professionals of course have higher IQs or like higher, they're talkative. You know what I'm saying? Like if you are on a welfare, then we can assume that you don't have a work, and then you spend that much time in family, you probably have like, I don't know, like emotional stress and some kind of disorder, but without controlling, I just don't
I
find
think something interesting was that although there were correlation to 3 different socioeconomic studies groups, they're all, each group all talked for the same amount in regards to work.
Okay.
So like they all had the same amount, like talking about work, how they work, how it went within the children in the room. But it was an extra talk that the parents did
Oh, okay.
that affected the result.